Every night is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Rangers Journal podcast for Thursday, the 26th of June. It is, of course, Thursday, and that always means we are doing a Q&A with you, the listeners. Joining me to go through all the events in another quiet week in the world of Rangers and to go through, obviously, your comments and questions. Well, it's first of all making his debut. It's Richard. Richard, how you doing, my pal?
Yeah, doing not too bad. Thanks very much, mate. Looking forward to the weekend.
Oh, I think we all are. Absolutely looking forward to the weekend. It's definitely looking forward to the football coming back in a couple of weeks as well. Obviously, and we're obviously joined by Dino as well. Dino, how are you going on, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you, buddy. How are you getting on?
I can't complain, but get a couple of weeks until the Rangers are back and I'll be back to my usual moaning, greeting face self. Gentlemen, obviously, before we get started, I think it's probably going to do us a lot of a disservice not to talk about the big news that's coming out of Rangers over the last kind of few hours or so, and that is, of course, the announcement of the new third kit that is being produced by Umbro, and we're just going to put a wee photo of it. Obviously, this is the new kit going to be out tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. What do you think, guys? Richard, fan of it?
I am. I like it. I've seen a few pictures on social media and stuff like that where it looks slightly different with the sleeves and things like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing it a bit more in person. But I'm a bit of a fan. I do like the badge, got to say. It's the best bit about it for me.
Absolutely. I think last year when we brought out the away kit and it had the shield, I would maybe hoping that we're actually going to have it on all the kits. I'm a big fan of the shield badge. It takes us back to 1998 and that magnificent night at Parkhead. Dino, the title of the tweet put out by Rangers is A Time of New Beginnings. This a kit that's going to inspire fresh start and success for us, you think?
Well, we've not really had much luck with new kits in the past when they've came out, have we? So you've got to think law of averages that this is maybe going to be our time.
You'd like to think so, and of course it wouldn't be a kit release if it didn't turn into London Fashion Week. Of course, Doug's got to get his opinion in that if these all of a sudden turn into Donatella Versace, and I would have this and I would have that, and see if it's a kit that we win in. Nobody's going to care. Let's be brutally honest. Nobody's going to care.
No.
Gentlemen, obviously, we'll talk about the big news. If obviously anybody that's listening to us, please don't hesitate to get your comments and questions in. We'll try and get through as many of them as we can over the next 50 minutes or so. But the big news that came out of Rangers, first of all, was late last night. We get a tweet out from Sasha Tagliafieri, apologies if I've mispronounced that Lille were severely interested and had agreed terms with Hamza Igaman over a transfer to France. Richard, we're probably expecting a big departure over the summer. Is that the one you were expecting, or do you think it was perhaps going to be Nico Raskin?
It's more. I can't say that I'm surprised by it. To be honest, he's shown in a small dose. To be fair, what he's capable of. That goal in Parkhead, particular. So I think between him, Raskin and Diomande is the three that we're really expecting. If people are going to go for serious money this summer, it's probably going to be from those three. I think everybody expected it to be Raskin, and I got to admit, personally, I'm a bit gutted. I was hoping that we'd get another year at least out of Igaman, sort of not build a team around him as such, but certainly hoping that he can fill the void and become a talisman. So I'm a little bit gutted about it, but it's also a bit strange how they've spoken to the player and stuff like that. I thought they had to agree terms with the club and stuff like that first of all, but I don't know.
Legally in the football rules, they obviously tapping up is what it's called, but it's not enforced anymore. It happens because officially the club don't go to the player and say, do you want to play for us? It's all done through agents now, so obviously it's not official. And I've seen people being annoyed about it and saying, how are they talking to him without talking to us? We do it as well. We're just as bad. It happens all over the world. So because you're not going to put in a bid for a player if you're not expecting them to be interested. That's essentially what it is. Now it's to save face. Dino, we did hear from our friends, our very good friends over at Heart and Hand. Mr. Edgar had reported in his daily update that Lille have already had a bid rejected of 14 million euros. I think that works out around about 12 million pounds. I think we're well entitled to think we could probably get more for Hamza at this stage in his career, as very limited top level experience as he has. he's clearly got all the attributes to go to the top, doesn't he?
He certainly does, if he's not played out in the left wing. And I think he's got to look at that as well, the way that Russell Martin's wanting his centre forward to play, is does Hamza have the attributes to play in a Russell Martin team as well? So he's got to look at that. I mean, he's got fantastic talent. Really, just good to see like a player like that, Ibrox. We've not seen a player like that, Ibrox, for a while. Have we somebody that just can make something out of nothing? And you know, if you could imagine him just really inspiring a team to go and win and things like that. Just a bit of magic that he's obviously capable of. And if he's going to, if you just said there, his agent's going to be trying to get him as good a deal as possible to make as much money himself as possible, isn't he? So, and if all parties are in the same wavelength, then we're going to be looking at upwards of £15 million, I think. And for somebody that we signed for what, £1 million a year ago, that's a pretty decent return on investment, if you ask me, for somebody that again was played probably half the time out in the left wing and didn't really get an opportunity to show what he was actually capable of. And when he played through the middle, he did do that, like Richard said, that goal at Parkhead. Although we didn't win the league, I think it's still one of the best goals I've seen at Parkhead for a long time. So none of us will forget that in a hurry. But I think if he's wanting to move on and wanting to go and play in a better league, play in a league that's run better, it's officiated better. I mean, it's quite a hard sell to come to Scotland when you've got you're playing in a game and you score a goal and it doesn't get given. Be things like that, I can imagine, plays on players' minds, and players not getting the right protection that they get, that they should get in the league. You've got a player like that. I mean, somebody like that in Scotland, you know, this takes one hammer thrower to come through him and break his leg, and he's out for a year and comes back half the player. So I really don't actually mind him moving on. I could completely understand it, and I'm convinced if we get a good sale on the profit of his next move, he's going to make us some mega bucks.
I couldn't agree more. I do have to correct myself. Obviously, Curry's been in. It was €17 million bid. It had been rejected by Rangers, which works out around about £14 million. So I do have to apologise there. My first mistake of the night already, and we're only 7 minutes in here, so hoping Rangers last longer before they make a mistake at the back. Just a wee thing I wanted to pick up just before we carry on. I've had a shout here from Kenny. Big shout out to Kenny, obviously over in Puerto del Carmen. Kenny, if you want to get in touch with any of the guys at the Journal, we're all on the socials. Follow the Rangers Journal on all the socials. That goes to anybody. Of course, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. All the podders are on it as well. If you ever need to get in touch with us about anything, please don't hesitate to. And a lot of the guys are obviously more than willing to get back in touch. So whatever your issue are, please don't hesitate, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And of course, thank you so much for your support and for listening. We really, really appreciate it. Richard, obviously we're talking about Hamza Egerman and we're talking about the potential that he has, but what that does leave is a huge talent, I suppose, a hole in the squad of one of the few guys that we probably don't want to sell, but obviously we have to think about the finances. So we have to look at replacements. At this moment, we've been linked. There's been a few names mentioned, perhaps some more, more concrete than others. We've had Dor Turgeman, the Israeli international who plays for Maccabi Tel Aviv. We've been linked with Matija Friedman, who plays for Westerlo, who is now managed, of course, by Issam Charai. Obviously, Mark's got a question. He just wants to ask, do we think we'll sell Egerman? Will we bring in Miovski or Shankland? I think we're kind of well past the Lawrence Shankland stage. Miovski's an interesting shout. He has been linked in the past with Celtic. He does understand the league, and he's not had the greatest time at Girona. I think perhaps going from Aberdeen to a team playing in the Champions League was a little bit too big of a step for him. But there's certainly potential out there, and I think replacing Egerman with someone like Shankland, even though if the rumours are to be believed, he's signing a new deal at Hearts, that's probably the one you would want to avoid, isn't it? And perhaps who do you think we should go for if you get anybody in mind?
I'm not getting anybody in particular in mind. I mean, as much as we've all seen, the stats and stuff like that have been flying around socials for Tigerman and various other players. You know, you watch the YouTube videos, but you can make anybody look good on YouTube, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? So it's one thing, you know, doing it in one league, and as the old, don't want to bring up cliches or anything like that, but it's been able to do it, you know, week in when you're expected to win. We've had players come to Rangers before that have done brilliantly in other leagues, you know, performed, and then when they've got 50,000 fans on their back because, you know, it's still 0-0 on the 75th minute, that pressure and whether they can handle it. So I'm hopeful whoever it is will come in, but there's nobody I can say that right now I think is going to be good. I'm just hopeful that, you know, somebody is going to come in, because Iggyman's proved that I think he does have the mentality. So we need to find somebody, you know, with that sort of mentality and talent as well. With going to Miovski, what you've said, he done well at Aberdeen, and it could be an astute signing. He, you know, knowing the league, can score goals, but it's the same thing, you know, when you're playing against a low block pretty much every week, compared to when he was at Aberdeen, and, you know, teams were attacking him, perhaps giving him that space and that freedom to move in the box. Whereas, you know, he's going to have, you know, maybe three to five defenders in the box with him every game in the league. You know, is he still going to be able to do it then? You know, I guess that's what the coaches are paid big money for. But I wouldn't be sad to say as much as Miovski, I think, would be astute, but he's not one that's going to, like, you know, he's not one to get his juices flowing, I don't think, for me. But I'm hopeful that whoever we get in, let's say, is going to be able to do it, because I think this is going to be a big void to fill, you know, especially amongst the fans.
I think so as well. Do you know, obviously, Richard picks up a place that we're obviously talking about Miovski, and that it's perhaps not, if he was coming straight from Aberdeen, it's probably a signing that doesn't get the fans as excited, despite the fact that he is a proven goal scorer in Scotland. Obviously there's been no concrete links, this is all that's all conjecture. What's probably more interesting about it is the fact that of the guys that have been linked to leave, i.e. Cyril Dessers, Bojan Miovski, I'm sorry, getting the head now, and Hamza Iggyman, they're probably not the most dynamic of forwards, if you understand what I mean. What their attributes are, you know, close control, Dessers sometimes finishing. These are kind of more going forward. But the one guy that's not been mentioned about leaving is Danilo, who is more of a fluid forward. And what Russell Martin spoke about in the past, or in his initial interview, was wanting to have a team that plays in the high press, that defence from the front is dynamic. And if I'm being honest with you, I don't think Dessers or Iggyman fit into that as well as Danilo has. So do you think it's not a coincidence that those are the two guys that have been linked to leave? Whereas Danilo has obviously been very, very prominent in the early pre-season pictures, and probably looking at, as Richard said, YouTube can make Indy look good, but Turgeman, Friedman look more dynamic forwards. Do you think that's probably not so much a coincidence?
Aye, pretty much nailed it there, mate. It's kind of the point I alluded to earlier on, that I don't really think Iggyman is perhaps the type of striker that Russell Martin wants on his side. And out of the three, probably Danilo ticks most of the boxes. And in terms of Dessers, I mean, you know, we are going to be needing somebody that can hold the ball up and bring others into play and things like that. And he obviously he's not able to do that. And I'm not going to, you know, talk about this for too long, but just, you know, Shankland, we were going to be signing, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, doing a Billy Connolly, but it'll make sense. Mulligan was, you know, a cop and signing, apparently, was going to come in right back, knows the league, ticks the homegrown box. So when I did the podcast with the Scotland coefficient guy, Gavin, on Saturday, and emphasised the importance of the 4 nation-trained players and the 4 club-trained players, and we've not had that for years. Like, Lauren Shankland ticks that box, do you know, and I don't think it would be too much of a negative that people obviously might think that having Danilo, Shankland and a marquee signing type centre forward is at least your 3 centre forwards going into the next season. Because I really want us to go into Europe and have a 25-man strong squad, have the 8, you know, players from Scotland in that squad. And I mean, in terms of Miovski, we all seen what he could do against Rangers. I mean, every time he played against us, you just felt he was going to score, didn't you? And as Richard had said there, does he have the ability to play against a low block? Because when he played for Aberdeen, he would never have experienced a low block. And that's something that I think is what Richard says. I don't mean to keep repeating what he said, Richard, but he made very good points. That's what the coaches get paid the good money for, and your Dan Purdys and Farewells get paid for it to, look at these players and want them to obviously be good enough to play in a Rangers side in the league, and that's the $1 million question.
Can I throw a curveball question in it? Yeah, if you don't mind. So, just thinking about Shankland, obviously there's been a lot of rumours about somebody quite prominent down in England about Vardy being in discussions potentially with us. Now, at his age, I don't think he's going to be a regular starter. Maybe looking to bring him on, at the end of games, similar to what we did with Jermaine Defoe. But would you rather have a 38-year-old Vardy or 31, 32-year-old Shankland for 3 or 4 years, considering he's going to be on a lot less money, still knows the league, is going to be able to do it? What would you pick out of them two? For not just for one season, but over several, perhaps?
Tough question, to be fair. On you go, Ross.
It is a tough question, and you've got to try and. There's so many boxes to tick now when it comes to squad building, and I completely agree with you. I know Shankland he's a fan favourite, and let's say in a hypothetical, I think that if we weren't having a takeover, if we hadn't had the takeover, and I think our direction of player trading has completely changed. I don't think it's a coincidence that we were linked with, like you say, Mulligan at Dundee, who was rumoured to have a medical. We don't know how true that is. He's now going to Hibs. I think we would have been in with a better shout of signing Shankland if we still had the kind of current owners and we were still on that trajectory. But I think that the owners that have come in now have completely and utterly changed the way that we're going to recruit and we're going to sign players. That being said, what I hope that they don't, and I know I'm kind of diverging a wee bit, but what I don't want them to get away from is the fact that the Rangers team, I still believe, regardless of the competition we play in, needs a strong Scottish core. That's one thing I like about the signing of Lyle Cameron. I still think that we need a few more, but I understand at the same time you can't go out and just sign Scottish players for the sake of signing Scottish players to tick boxes. It's unfortunate that that's the UEFA rules, and you see it in England sometimes that they'll maybe just sign players to tick boxes. We're not in a position to be able to afford that. We need like Dean said, a 25-man squad that can contribute to be successful on, 3 fronts domestically and to have a decent run in Europe. So I know it doesn't really answer your question, but it's really hard to think about it and not want to try and get as many top level players in as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that, but I just always think like getting a top level player like Vardy, who's going to be on a fortune. He's going to be one of the top, top guys taking money home every week, and to be not playing every week, sorry, is what I'm trying to get at. I don't know. I just think I don't know if it'd be value for money for me, to be honest. Whereas I think Shankland, the way I look at it, is somebody again that knows league. Don't know if he'd be able to play. Have that mentality to play for Rangers. Whether or not be able to play against a low block like every week. But I think being able to sign him and get 3 seasons out of him compared to Vardy, where we're going to be playing probably 3 times as much to maybe get 1 or 2. If I had to pick between the two, honestly, I'd probably go Shankland personally. But I can understand the appeal for Vardy, and I'm not trying to say that he's not an exceptional player and won't do as a turn. But just try to think of it, over the length of a contract. That's probably what I would go for personally.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Dino, obviously we're talking about Jamie Vardy there. There's a question that's obviously come in from Stephen, that came in at the start. Obviously he's talking about marquee signings. That's probably more the level of the signing that we perhaps might make towards the end of the summer, when I think most of our trading's done. I don't think that, I know there's been a lot of frustration within the support over the lack of transfer action so far, despite the fact we're now, nearly finished the first week of pre-season. But I think what we probably need to understand is that we probably need to get rid of a lot of guys first before we're in a position to bring players in. We've been linked loosely, albeit with, Jamie Vardy. Luke de Jong get mentioned by the Dutch, a part of the Dutch press. I don't know how accurate it is. That's probably a guy at the kind of higher level that I think we need. Whether it's one of those two, I don't know. But I am, you know, I know we've obviously been talking about finances and stuff like that. Do we really need a signing like that to galvanise the support and give them real buy-in into what Russell Martin's going to do? Or do you think that's perhaps just pie in the sky stuff and we need to just trust the process?
Both can coexist. The fans need that lift. Primarily because we've been subjected to absolute crap for just so long, and being second in the league and just second best for so long, the fans are needing that lift. That do you know what that's a real statement from the club, a statement of intent. We want to see that because we want to believe in the process. Simple as that. You know, all these. Everything that's, it's all these sound bites and lip service and things like that. It's all fair and well, but it's all what happens on the pitch, and the fans want to be excited about being excited when they go to Ibrox. And if you're going spending money, substantial amount of money for us on one or two marquee signings, then that's going to put a spring in everybody's step, as far as I'm concerned. And I think we've got to realise that there is a lot of deadwood there. I mean, Kieran Dowell and the training pictures and stuff like that, and Proper, and players that you just want eradicated for the club. But at the end of the day, we've got to realise that it's not as quick and easy as Football Manager. So we've just got to have a wee bit patience and trust the process. That I do believe there will be marquee signings. I'm convinced of that.
We're probably in a better stage financially to perhaps bring in a couple of guys. Not to say that we're going to bring in guys on 50, 60 grand a week, because we quite simply can't do that. And I understand, the appeal is there to have someone like Jermaine Defoe, but I think what needs to be remembered about Jermaine Defoe was that Bournemouth were very accommodating in his wages when he came on loan from us, as they kind of didn't fulfil their promises to him, so they allowed him to come up here and play. But obviously all the talk is about the exciting attackers. That's what we love to talk about. We like when a new shiny number 9 turns up that's going to score us 30 goals a season. But we have focused more on the defence, the guys that have turned up. We've obviously signed Max Aarons, he was confirmed earlier in the week, he arrived from Bournemouth. We have been linked, obviously, as well with Connor Cody, and obviously that's this question put up by Mark. Talking about the wages of Connor Cody, I think that if it's to be believed that he has taken a significant pay cut to come here, and we're probably essentially buying out the last year of his contract as a transfer fee, I think, to get him to come. Richard, Connor Cody is probably a player that divides the support depending on what you actually look for in a centre half, but the defence couldn't have got any worse. Last year, John Souttar was inconsistent, probably to say the least. Robin Proper just didn't work out. Should all things go as expected, he'll probably be off to back to FC20 hopefully in the next week or so. So it's a position that really needs to be looked at seriously, doesn't it?
It does, but I'm quite excited about Cody. He's the type of player that I think Martin's going to be the type of football that we're going to play. I know there was said about his pace and stuff like that, but he's. I don't think he's going to have the same problems that Proper's had. I think he's going to be able to handle, the rough and tumble of Scottish football. Going to be able to put his head in certain places. Where some of the other defenders perhaps don't, Proper in particular. So I'm excited about it, and especially with Aarons coming in at right back. Whether or not he's going to play there, I don't know. Whether or not he's going to just, take Tav's spot. I mean, we're not bringing him on loan without an obligation to buy, to put him on the bench. He's going to play, but I don't know whether intention he's going to play slightly forward. Tav's going to move inside, at centre back. But I'm excited about that because just those two signings alone completely changes the shape of our defence from last season. With putting Cody in there, Souttar, who is still very capable, although he had a shaky season, I'd say inconsistent, had his injuries as well, but he's still someone that I don't worry too much when I see him in the starting lineup. Obviously, we've got Nsiala as well, but still quite young and raw, and whether or not he'll actually be at the club, and whether or not he'll go out on loan. But having somebody like Cody with his experience, his leadership attributes as well to bring the squad on, and Nsiala potentially, because I think there's a player in there with him as well.
Definitely, I think that it really, it almost immediately, like you say, changes the dynamic of the defence. We've got Clinton Nsiala, as you mentioned, who has had moments where he's looked, he looks like a young, inexperienced player who's played at a decent academy. So there is room there, and I think that's a guy you need to have in your team. You need to have guys to develop, and you need experience. One of the things about Conor Cody that I think is appealing, and I think we can all agree, is that there's been a distinct lack of leadership throughout the whole team, and bringing in somebody like that who does have that experience as a captain and as a leader at the top level. He has played in the Premier League for years. He has been capped for England. I don't know if he played at the tournament he played at a tournament for England, but he has played at that level. Is he being brought in more, not to disregard them, but more for his off the field attributes than his on the field ones, because it's something that we severely lack?
I think he's been brought for both, and I believe it's 10 England caps he's had, which is pretty good, given, I guess, the quality of English centre-halves over the last 10 years. He's done really, I think, to get 10 caps, given he wasn't even playing at a high level, however many years ago it was. So fair play, he's obviously got a lot of wins. And I think as well as what he can bring you off the field in the dressing room, things like that, which we've got, very little of. But on the pitch as well, he's the type of person that will be in a referee's face, will be, challenging things which we don't see from much players in the team, because we don't have any personalities that are like that. And apparently that's what he's like. What I've seen of him, probably not as much as the average person, but he's not scared to show his shout his opinions and stuff. So, and that's what we badly need. We need players sticking up for players on the pitch and things like that, and that sort of dominating presence. And if he's lost a bit of pace, or never even had pace to begin with, but he brings those attributes on the pitch, I'm all for it. And if he can get a good physical younger centre half next to him who's faster and things like that, then it probably could work. I mean, I'm not comparing him to the great Davy Weir, but Davy Weir had Carlos Quela next to him, Boogie next to him, who were both quite quick centre halves, weren't they? So, and that partnership worked. Although a style of football was completely different 15 years ago or whatever, but yeah, I do think that Cody will be a great acquisition for both his on-field and off-field attributes.
I'd like to think so. That's the kind of guy that we do need. And obviously, I think comparing him to David Weir and using it, as an example, it does make sense. You don't want to always just use it, but even look at somebody like Phil Hollander. Not fast, had no pace whatsoever, but his reading of the game was phenomenal. Arguably one of the best we've ever had. I think we can all agree in that he was absolutely superb. I don't think we've had a centre half that could read the game like him for basically probably since Weir. And if Cody's got the same idea, then we could be on a winner. However, he needs a partner, and there's been a little bit of a debate, if you've seen the training video from today, of a certain captain playing next to him, or perhaps playing as a potential centre half. Richard, last year a couple of times, due to injury and due to other circumstances, we've seen the skipper, James Tavernier, playing as a right-sided defender. Is that where his long-term future lies, or do you think that's just horses for courses?
I think it's going to be this season. My personal opinion, I think Max Aarons will play, and I think he'll play right back. I'm not saying that Tav will be played centre back every game. I think he might, be pushed a little bit more further forward and see the two of them. I quite like to see that. But I think definitely for his future, it's probably going to be coming inside a bit more. Not whether or not he'd be a starting centre back. I'm not so sure about that. Even just with the defenders we've got at the minute, I personally think if it was me, I'd have Aarons at right back and then Suter and Cody. And I'm taking it as Cody that he's pretty much signed, even though it's not been confirmed yet. But I'll probably have them two at the back for me. But I do think that's probably what's going to happen with him with his age this season, his experience. He's always been susceptible, as the fans always moan about for him defensively. But that's been out on the wing, as it were. At the back, he's probably got that calming presence. Knows the game, knows our game very well. So I think he could do a job there. Whether or not it'd be the starting centre back, I'm not so sure.
Dino, the argument I used is that the attributes that James Tavernier has and brings to a team going forward are very, very positive, and you can't take that away from him. What's used against him is perhaps the lapses in defensive concentration, the lack of sometimes tracking a man. How many times have we had the usual argument of Tav at the back post, FFS? So if he's playing as a centre half where your job is to track your man, maybe I'm being too sceptical. Is that perhaps being a little bit harsh? That I don't think it's for him. Are you convinced of it, or do you think that it's perhaps either a rotational right back and the club captain and that's it?
I don't even think it's rotational. I think it's if there's everybody else is injured and suspended type thing. But our standards have to be higher than that. Of having a defender who's been criticised for his lack of defensive attributes for 10 years to then come in and be a centre half. I'm sorry, but our standards have to be higher than that. They really do. And I'd appreciate that this isn't the summer that he's maybe going to be going club captain, but playing the odd game, give somebody a rest. Game that you would think that we're going to be able to win, but it would have to be a centre half. There's nobody on earth he can be playing at right back, because Russell Martin plays fast attacking football. The wing backs are very highly involved. Tav slows everything down, and if we're like counter attacking or trying to get the ball at the pitch and he's taking a throw and he's taking half an hour. Do you know what I mean? It's we need players that can play quick, fast football, and that just isn't Tav. Irrespective of all the back post goals that he scored in penalties over his Rangers career, he just doesn't have that. Even a lot less now than he did when he was, the other side of 30. So yeah, appreciate that he's 33, 34 this year. Last year his contract, so I think we can all maybe say that he's hopefully just going to play as least amount of time as possible.
I agree. I think it's not. I don't want it to turn into a Tav bashing pod. We've done enough of them over the years, and I think you can go into any form of media that's involved a Rangers supporter over the last decade, and you'll find plenty of content for that. Just one last thing I wanted to bring up regarding the defence. It's obviously a couple of guys keep talking about it. Ben Davies won't be at Rangers come the start of the season. I don't think he's not good enough. And if we can get more money, any sort of money from Birmingham City, then you take it and go. This is one of those deals it's not worked out. He's just not suited. Although he's a decent football player, he's not good enough to play in Scotland. So I think we could probably put that one to bed. Richard, are you in agreement with that, or can you make a defence for Ben Davies?
No, I can't, and I do expect him to go. And to be honest, there's nothing in it for me. I think why we should keep him. He's done a good job down in League One with Birmingham. They're the ones that are after him, stepping up to the Championship. I imagine he'll probably want to go as well, to be honest. But I can understand, Russell Martin getting everybody in. No, nothing's been agreed with Birmingham. Getting in, have a look at him. Where do we go from there? See if he is going to be in his team. Perhaps you just don't know. I doubt it though. I think the club are probably going to look to sell him. I think the player himself, probably wants to go. He's built up a rapport with the Birmingham fans. He's proven himself with them. Whereas with us, his name being called out in the team sheet, we'll just hear the groans. So I think it's probably going to be best for both the club and player to shake hands, move on, and get somebody else in.
I think we can all be in agreement on that. It's difficult to talk about because we've not had many solid links for players, and I don't think until maybe a player or two leaves, we'll probably see anything more significantly concrete apart from perhaps Conor Cody. But the one we have been linked with has been Owen Beck. Obviously Owen Beck's had an 18-month spell at Dundee and then get taken back off loan. He's had a couple of injuries, but looked a very, very good young footballer. He's obviously come through the Liverpool Academy at left back. But any deal for him seems to be based on any movement of one of our other left backs, most likely Ridvan Yilmaz. He's been linked with a return to Turkey every 35 seconds, if you believe the Turkish press. You know what they're like. Is Yilmaz just another one of these signings, perhaps, that's not worked out because of the quite significant amount of money that we spent on him?
Again, just another player that's like made of polystyrene. It's simple as that. I know we played the base party 4 or 5 million or something like that for him, but I really, 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 really wanted it to work out for him when Barisic was getting a game and he shouldn't have been getting a game, and Ridvan was fit the odd time. I just wanted Barisic gone, and then I was thinking, great opportunity for Ridvan, and then cannot stay fit. So we just have to cut our losses on that one. I don't think we're going to be breaking even on that, I think. So we just have to put him back to Turkey and let them deal with him. And hopefully this new era of Rangers is going to be signing players who are made of stronger stuff.
That's got to be it. I think that, like I said, we were talking about, I think our portfolio of players that we're signing or we look to sign is completely different from what we had before. Although, Richard, Yilmaz was a funny one. When he arrived in the summer of 2022 on big money, him and Ben Davies were basically bought to replace Calvin Bassey, who could do everything at that point. He was the left back, he was the left centre back, he was a midfielder at points. He had just come off a phenomenal 6-month spell. And the signing of Yilmaz, I thought at the time, made a lot of sense. He was a young attacking fullback who had just broke into the Turkish national team. He had a lot of potential, but there just seems to be something about guys that turn up here on big money and with big potential, and it doesn't work. Is it us? Are we the problem, or is it maybe just a mentality thing, or are we too hard on them? I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that before we move on.
Yeah, coming in for good money. Can't remember the amount we paid for him, but he was quite coveted. It seemed that quite a few other clubs were in for him at the time, and it seemed that we were quite fortunate to get him. I think he showed in glimpses there's a player there, when he's not injured. He's had a couple of shocking games, but I think every player has as well. But he's had some good performances. So I'm a little bit disappointed that it's not worked out for him. But I can't say. I don't know what it is, to be honest. I know that coming over here at first, he didn't play for a little bit because of learning the language and things like that, settling. And he was a young kid, so it does take players some time to get used to it, and especially younger ones. But I don't know. But you look throughout the years, like we've had some issues developing the young players. Obviously Calvin Bassey was exceptional, but he took a few months to get going. I think it was 6 months before he really sort of got a game for us and proved what he can do. Whereas Yilmaz just hasn't done that. He's had a few games, but never really kicked on, unfortunately. And then injuries have just took their toll. So I think it's another one where we just say, thanks very much, and we'll probably go back to Turkey as he's rumoured every window and say thanks very much, mate, and see what we get in.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Rangers Journal, you cannot say that we are not good to you. And that after all of this, we've decided to give you an extra special cameo from the face that runs the place. The boss man has graced us with his presence. Scotty, how you doing, pal?
I hang together, mate. Hang together. We were on a lot sooner, but I was having my tea. Really sorry. really sorry, but I was getting my dinner.
I thought you were trying to wake up the mouse to get your internet working.
Aye, pretty much. Aye. If you want to call it that. I did actually reboot it before I came on. So it does seem to appear to be working okay tonight, thankfully. Curry, who let that roaster on? Aye. I let myself on, Curry.
He's a boss. He's a boss man. He can do what he wants. He runs the show. You know this, Curry. Obviously, Scott. I don't know. Obviously, how much of it you've seen. It's ended up we've kind of been working through the team a little bit, and I just wanted to. I was actually just going to ask Richard, but I'll ask you as well. We've obviously we've spoken about the defence, but the next kind of big move that I think needs to be made is the left back area. It needs to be addressed probably more seriously than I think a lot of people think. Owen Beck's obviously been linked. We're probably waiting on Yilmaz leaving before that gets done. Would you be up for that?
Aye, I think it's a safe move for Rangers bringing in Owen Beck. I don't think it's a spectacular move in terms of left backs. I think the spectacular move in terms of left back was made from bringing in Jeff Day last season. I don't think it was a bad move. I think that's turned out to be quite safe, and I think that's where we're going to see the fruition of that this season. So I think Owen Beck coming in, I think we're going to see some healthy competition. They're giving Ridvan is sold this season, Ross. Ridvan needs to go now. If Owen Beck's going to come in, Ridvan needs to go. There's no doubt in my mind. You can't have Owen Beck and Ridvan competing for that position unless there's going to be a healthy bid put in for Ridvan, put in for Jeff Day. My apologies. There's got to be a route finally for Ridvan back to Turkey or Italy or elsewhere. Now's the time to go. We've kind of hung on Ridvan for 18 months now, I would say. He's done a couple of decent matches right up until he's the shot against Hampden, kind of season opener. The shot against can't remember who the opponent was. Motherwell, shot and goal, pulls a groin, 6 weeks out, and then you eat, sleep, rave, repeat. Really, for anyone in it, it's never really get going for Ridvan. It makes the Turkey team, gets a run the Rangers team, makes the Turkey team, gets injured. I think he needs to go back to his homeland and go back to basics, if I'm being honest. Whether it's a loan with an obligation to buy it, can I be a loan with an option? Needs to be a loan with an obligation. Needs to be a route out for Rangers in this circumstance. I'm not sure what age he is, Rossi, 21, 22. That's where I'm looking for Doug, maybe 23 now.
I think we signed him when he was 21, so he's probably maybe closer to 24 now. He has been here for 3 seasons.
So it's time for Rangers. I know he's got 2 years left in his contract thanks to Rangers review this morning. They were talking to him, but it's definitely time for Rangers to sell up with this boy. And if we're serious about bringing in Owen Beck, then we need to get rid. But see, in terms of Owen Beck coming in a loan deal, I'm all for stability in this window, which I think we need to do in certain areas of the park. I think Owen Beck would be a stable signing, but in terms of bringing in Owen Beck, his injury record and on loan doesn't fill me with great confidence, and going after Peterborough centre backs doesn't fill me with great confidence either. And competing doesn't fill me with great confidence either. So in terms of Owen Beck, it would need to be a purchase. If we're going to be stable in this window, go and buy a boy for £4 or £5 million. Make a statement. Go and buy him.
Can I just jump in there if you don't mind? I completely agree with you. I don't see the point. I think it'd be a good signing to challenge Jeff on there, but I don't see the point in, especially the rumours being that it would just be a loan that Liverpool try to renew his contract. Why bring him in on loan to not potentially for him not to be an out and out starter the way we think Aaron's is going to be? Develop him to push our player. I get that, but I would rather play Yefty than and develop him, give him the games and the minutes rather than somebody on loan that is going to go back to another club. You know, if we bring in loan players, they need to be players that are really going to pretty much be starters, right? I think so. We don't want another Fernandes. It's just going to be on the bench, because to be honest, I would say that doesn't do us any good. That's not the model we want to go down. It's okay for, you know, bringing in loan players that make an impact, like Czerny. You know, as disappointing as it was that he's gone, but he done us a turn. He was one of our standout players. Do I think Boak's going to do that with Yefty? I'm not so sure, to be honest.
Ross, if I can quickly come in here, I don't think it's a good start to the window, as Richard said, having your both fullbacks coming in on loan, both starting fullbacks. Like, if that makes any sense, like, they both had promise already. They both finished the season on injuries. We've done a song and dance already as Rangers fans with the takeover. We've got a new technical director. We're shopping in markets. We've had a knock back for Kwame Poku, which has put us off a wee bit. I think it's fair to say. He's away to QPR. I for one was really, really looking forward to seeing that signing. I think in terms of Czerny, I think he was going to come in and replace the goals and assists that, in terms of goal contributions that he had. I think he would have replaced him either way in terms of goal or assists. I think he would have did 20 either way in terms of league. I think the boy would have been that good. In terms of our shopping, I'm not confident. And seeing loan moves in that department I'm behind it, but I'm not fully for it, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. You can't have a loan's all right now and again. If it's loans with obligations, then he's basically your guy, and you're essentially just moving the money about a little bit for a year or two. Do you know what I mean?
Ideally, you're looking for a loan with an option.
Aye, and when you're if you've got 2 or 4 starting defenders that are loans for no reason other than, you know, just being there, then that's no use to us, especially at the stage that we're trying to build squads. Obviously, just before we finish up, we'll answer a couple. We'll look at a couple more. We've went through the team, but we've had a couple of questions, obviously, regarding Vasa Czerny. He's been told by Wolfsburg that he is for sale. He's got no future in Germany. People would probably like to have him back. I think he's probably a little bit too much out of our price range for the budget that we've got, despite the fact that it is probably going to be significantly bigger than it would have been prior to the takeover. Do you know, the wingers, obviously Mitch has put up the current wide options that we've got are McCausland, Cortez, Finlay Curtis and Nadim Bajrami if needed. That's an area that needs significant investment, isn't it?
Aye, that's has definitely areas, 2 areas that need invested in heavily, and you might see your marquee signing be your right winger, but that is not going to be Czerny. He will be able to go to a top 5 league and get double of what he could get with us, at least double. So I non-starter from the start as far as I'm concerned. We just need to be, as fans, you know, looking at other things and putting our energy into other players, because you're wasting your energy putting into Czerny as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, when I mean the top 5 league, he could play for a top club because he's proved that he can play at an elite level as far as I'm concerned. But he's no company us. And you just have to, I guess, getting back to the earlier on, trust the process. And, you know, it's highly likely that one of our marquee signings will be a right winger. And you're going to have to put, as you said, bums in the seats in the stands. And if you're going out and making a statement signing of a right winger, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's what's needed.
I think we need more than just a right winger, to be brutally honest with you. Richard, we're obviously talking about the potential of Vasa Czerny. I think it's more pie in the sky stuff. People talking about 4 million. it's going to cost probably at least double that to get a player of that quality back to Ibrox. And can we afford to take a significant amount of our transfer budget, not half of it, but a significant amount of the money we're going to have to spend this summer on one player, regardless of the amount of... I know he gives a lot of goals and a lot of assists, and he was a really good signing for us last year in a season that was extremely poor, but that money could buy 2 or 3 players that we need. Did you agree with that?
I think so. I mean, I would like to see Tierney come back, to be honest. It depends. It's one of those things. It's whether or not, one, how much the club want him, to be honest. If he wants to come back to us, it depends on the offers. But if it gets late into the window, and we haven't been able to fill that right wing position for whatever reason, Wolfsburg still want to sell him. They've had no bids, and we're the only interest. That fee might come down quite considerably, and a deal can be done. So I wouldn't completely rule it out yet, because from what I read earlier on, there's not been any takers for him, and I think Wolfsburg in a little bit of financial trouble. So I'm not sure. Obviously, they probably will want about 6 or 7 million, but to put him on a transfer list, you don't want him. That's something for a bargaining chip for us. But I'm kind of hoping that we'll look, for somebody younger. I like the idea of Poku, to be honest. I thought he was going to be. I had a good feeling about him, to be honest. I've got a couple of guys I work with that are Peterborough fans that are quite excited about him, disappointed to lose him. You know what I mean? But I just hope that, whoever does replace Tierney, that, they pass on the water bottle. Somebody good.
I think so. I think the signing of Poku made a lot of sense, especially on this kind of cross-border fee that we've benefited from with guys like Calvin Bassey, Joe Aribo. We've seen, the other side of the city benefit from it as well. So it would have made a lot of sense, and I think to be able to replace Tierney's goals and assists to some degree, that would have been obviously important, because we have to spend a lot of money. I read a statistic earlier on, and forgive me if it's incorrect, but it was between Dessers, Egeman and Vasa Cherny, we get 61 goals. 61 goals alone to replace, never mind goal and assists and things like that. So that's a significant portion that we have to spend just to replace that. Because if obviously Dessers leaves to go to Athens, which we believe could be the case, Egeman, obviously, who we've already spoke about, and Cherny, who's away on loan, we might not get back. But we've already, Scott, I think we all seem to be forgetting that we've spent £4.5 million on Oscar Cortez. He's been written off. Has that perhaps been a little bit unfair to him?
I would say so, aye. See if you think back to where we were that night at Rugby Park before he got injured. Obviously, we go on to win that game via... I remember Tom Lawrence scoring that night, because Tom Lawrence, that night he scored, they won me 450 quid, because I had him on to score us to win. 50 quid on it. It was like, whatever, 561 or whatever it was. Right, so I was buzzing at the time. But at the same time, Cortez gave us a certain balance on the left side of midfield that we've not had since. And since then, if you look at the options we've had on the wings, Stu John Sterling, Ross McCausland on the right, you've had Giannis Hadji, you've had Vaclav Cherny on the right. I can't even remember anybody else we've had on the left. Badrami being the other, who at least 2 of them are an actual 10, who were starters under Philippe Clement in terms of being a natural number 10 position. Even Todd Cantwell was flooded out of the right wing position at one point under Clement. So it's no... Rangers haven't started with natural wingers in 18 months now, 2 years, I think it's fair to say. Around about that. For John Lundstrom was Tony's caravan about the number 6 position for Rangers. Remember John Lundstrom? I think him and Borna Barisic have been put up for sale for Trabzonspor. Good luck getting rid of they two. But in terms of the wing position, Oscar Cortez is going to, hopefully he's going to fly this summer. Hopefully he's going to take up the mantle for... I'm hoping for these interviews we've had to Russell Martin, I'm hoping for what Pete says the other night on a Conor Cody breakdown. Not only did he speak about Conor Cody, he spoke about Jamie Vardy, he spoke a wee bit about Russell Martin too, because he's the Southampton FC commentator last summer. he spoke a wee bit about his player management and how good he is with his players. I'm hoping that he's going to take Oscar Cortez aside and have a word. Hoping the boy's not scarred for a couple of weeks with Barry, because to me, Barry's treatment for with Danilo and Cortez was crap, to be fair. I think he could have gave the boys game time. He's talking about effort and training, fine. If that's his judgment, okay, granted. But I'm hoping that Russell Martin's judgment is going to be a wee bit different, and I'm hoping that his people skills are going to be a wee bit different, and I'm hoping it's going to get a wee bit more out of these boys. Everybody's talking about Igaman and Dessers, and I'm hoping that Danilo is going to be the surprise package that comes out of pre-season for Russell Martin, and that Danilo is going to surprise everybody and start firing in a £6 million price tag, because it's not Danilo's fault that he got his face mangled and his knee done at Tynecastle and his shoulder dislocated, and it's not as if it's been hamstrings and groin injuries and all the rest of it. Like, it's not been his fault, if that makes any sense. But just a quick question to you, Ross. See if you were to get £10 million, right? See we sell a man for 25 or 20, say. You get 10 million quid in. Who do you buy with that £10 million? You get 3 players for Rangers attack. Who do you sign?
3 for the attack?
Well, anybody. Is there anybody that sticks out to you? Sima, Tierney.
Nah, I wouldn't get near Sima, and I wouldn't get near Tierney. Like I say, I was talking about. I think I couldn't justify, if I was the Rangers manager, I couldn't go to the board and justify having to spend a significant chunk of change on Tierney when I think we could get 3 players. And if it was a season where we didn't need to have a complete and utter squad revamp, where you could easily make a justification for every single player being sold one way or another. I know we're talking about we don't want Egeman to go, we don't want Raskin to go, but they could go to make us money. Every other player could leave and no one would miss them. So to go then and then spend, let's just say hypothetically, £6 million on Tierney, that's a hell of a chunk of change for us at this moment in time. And that's, I know that's maybe been a bit harsh because he's a good player, and I said he's a good player, but I don't know, because I don't really know who we've been linked with. I like the idea of the one I've seen that I really like is Thureman. Of the guys that we've been linked, he's a centre forward that scores goals, and I know that's something we do need. He seems to be a guy that can press from the front, that we want to play this attacking, dynamic football, which starts even when you don't have the ball. He looks like a guy that can do that. Freeman as well, because I have a sentimentality towards Croatian number 9s. That'll always. You could tell me the guy plays for Dinamo Zagreb's C team, and if he was a striker, I'd be like, 20 million, get him up the road.
Nikita Yelovic's younger brother.
Honestly, God, the only time I've ever cried at the football was when I seen him getting paraded at Goodison Park. Don't even bring it up, man. It's giving me PTSD. Honestly, God. To answer your question, I don't know, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. We've now got guys in positions who are going to be paid significantly well, who have a big reputation to make these decisions, and they've got for the first time in a long time, we've got a management team that includes Kevin Thelwell, Dan Purdy, Russell Martin, who have a complete clean slate. Because
I was just wondering if there was anybody that stuck out. It'd be an interesting one for the other 2 boys. Is there anybody that stick out in your mind that, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but
there's plenty of players I can think of. Whether or not we could would get them, it's a different matter. Do you know what I mean? But I'm kind of same as Ross. There's nobody I can think of straight away that I would think, right, snap him up. To be honest, within our range, to be, that's what you hope that that's what the scouting department does, what Kim Thelwell, what they're bringing in to do. We want to find another Igaman, basically. That's what we're all hoping for. There's no point in saying a name, because we don't know whether or not they come, how realistic it is. Well, what we're hoping is that they're doing their jobs and we're going to find, the next Igaman to fill the role. But change the subject, well, not change the subject, but from what Ross said, what you're saying about Tierney, I probably would spend a decent bit of money on him, to be honest, because as much as we say about Tosman or anybody else coming into the club, as soon as you spend a decent bit of money or make them a marquee signing because we've spent 6 or 7 million, that's still a huge risk. You don't know if how they're going to perform, like I said, whether or not they're going to be able to handle it. At least with Tierney, you know what you're getting. You know they can perform. You know they're going to put in the assists. They know what it's going to be like to play, Dundee United away on a Tuesday, and they're going to be able to handle the pressure of 50,000 fans. So would you rather pay 6 million for Tierney, you know what you're going to get, or 6 million on somebody you don't know?
Totally fair point. And that's the thing, is that it's a nice argument to have. It's not a 1 year where everybody's going, don't touch him because he was rotten, which is probably part of the argument that we were using for Cortez. Dino, I'll give you the last word before the boss man comes up and shouts us out for going over an hour. You can have the last word. And it sticks out for you?
Nah, nobody. Kind of live under a rock at times, to be quite honest with you. So I just like to see what's happening in the chat and get excited that way. And people, like, I'm always like, who's that? Tell me about him. So I just sit back and watch things as they develop. But as I said earlier on, I'll keep repeating it. Just trust the process, trust the setup that we've got now, and believe in everything that's happening at Ibrox, because it's weird being in a position that we're in, because we've been, run like an amateur club at times, and now we've got people in the building who have deep pockets and people who want to win. And I know that's kind of, that's second nature at Rangers, but actually believe in these guys, previous boards and things like that, you kind of got the feeling that they were happy to accept second best. Kind of get the feeling that these guys won't be happy accepting second best, or sorry, won't accept second best. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to the next few weeks and seeing a Russell Martin team develop.
Absolutely. I think the thing we need to all agree on is that it's going to take time, and the old saying goes that Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was sacked in a night. And Russell Martin, if he doesn't get it right, will be sacked in a night. We'll leave you on that note. Thank you so much to everybody for your comments, for your questions. Just a wee shout out at the end, of course, to our sponsors at Off to the Match I Go. If you scan the QR code in the left-hand corner, use the code Journal10, you'll get 10% off your first order. Some top-tier Rangers memorabilia over there for any sort of gifts, or just for your own personal collection. Of course, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for a magnificent debut from Richard. Richard, you were an absolute fan favourite tonight, especially from Mitch.
Cheers, I appreciate that.
Dino, whatever you're doing in your hotel room, mate, well done you.
Thanks for having me on, Ross. Pleasure and privilege.
And of course, a cameo for the gaffer always goes down a treat with the watchers. Scotty, my man, thank you.
No bother. Can I just say my play would have been 7 million quid in Lennon Miller? Friend.
7 million quid in Lennon Miller, friend.
Yes.
And we'll leave you
Spend the money,
that.
Rangers. Spend the money.
Spend the money, Rangers.
In terms of a number 8, you link all the play together, the way Russell Martin plays, spend the money. It's a no-brainer. He's going to be worth it. Look at Max Johnson. He's been linked with Napoli because I got him for £500,000 for Motherwell. No-brainer. Go and do it.
Well, of course, it wouldn't be a Rangers transfer without a few what-ifs, and we will leave you on that note. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your comments, for your questions. We are always on all the socials: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. You'll see us all over there. The guys will be back tomorrow with your weekly news at midday. Am I right, Scotty? Midday? Yep. Boys will be on, as always. And remember, every night is your Rangers Journal night. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Good night.